Hello, everyone, and good day to you. I am your host, Mira McQuarrie from the Event Circle here at Deep Funding. And if you've been following this series, you know that we've explored decentralized AI from just about every angle, really. We've seen the technical foundations, the community dynamics, the user experience, the power of storytelling, the data that makes those stories believable. We've had great guests from Haley Lowy to Roho Kaboti to Dr. Esther Gaffini, really, really amazing people that we've had on here, um, breaking down these concepts in AI deconstructed as a series here. And today we are talking about something that sits underneath all of that, something that determines whether any of this audacious vision we've been building towards actually, becomes reality. The question tonight really is just how do we get there, right? Not in theory, not in white papers or conference keynotes where everything sounds lofty and inevitable, but in practice, with real infrastructure, constraints that actually exist, real users who need solutions today, all while we are building for tomorrow. And something that I've been thinking about, and something we're considering while we're planning this, was the fact that we love to talk about moonshots in this space, really. And there are lots of conversations going on the internet, in various communities around AGI and super intelligence, and in VGI in some cases, and how AGI will transform everything. Decentralized systems that will democratize intelligence, the future that's just around the corner if we can build it fast enough, if we're ambitious enough, if we're revolutionary enough. And I think that there is a different way to talk about audacious goals. And it's not something that's less ambitious. It's actually more about how complex systems get built. Baby steps. Quite frankly, before we fully conceptualize this episode, I think one random and you would know this if you've been listening to our episodes here, is these thoughts come to me in very random moments. I believe I can't remember what time of day it was, but I was thinking about AGI, and I was thinking about baby steps, and I was like, okay, but like there are baby steps to what AGI is, and I'd scribbled baby steps in my work notes, and that's how all of this came about. And I know how it sounds. It's in a space that's obsessed with disruption and exponential growth. Baby steps almost feels like modest. But I was thinking that what if the path to AGI isn't one giant leap? What if it's actually paved with deliberate, strategic, unglamorous steps that compound over time? And today I am talking with Kella. We are learning from Kella Crawford, who leads innovation at Singularity Net, focused on AGI research. He's also focusing on decentralized infrastructure and AI data centers. And what makes this conversation especially valuable is his journey before SingularityNet. Keller, interestingly, spent a decade making financial wellness more accessible, most notably as co-founder of Automo. I hope that's how it's pronounced. He built tools that worked for real people with real constraints, with real barriers. And now he's bringing that same product led, execution driven approach to basically uh, one of humanity's most ambitious challenges, AGI, artificial general intelligence. Interestingly, you would find that Keller describes his strength as being at the intersection of software strategy and systems thinking. And his mission remains constant, building tools that scale, ideas that matter, and AI that serves the broad good. So, Keller, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, and welcome to AI Deconstructed, your last guest for the year. And I think there's no better way to wrap up this AI Deconstructed series we've had in
All
2025
right.
than with you. Thank you so much. So excited to have you on here.
It's a pleasure, Mary.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yes. So we're just going to get right into it because we know that there's much to discuss and much to learn from you, right? And there are a couple of questions, as always, that we've prepped. And let's just start with this. AGI is that moonshot everyone is talking about right now. Everyone is talking about it for a while, but right now it's such an interesting discourse. But you're focused on interestingly baby steps. What made you realize that starting small is actually the path to getting there?
Yeah, I really like what you said there about modest modesty in the approach, because yeah, when we hear, all the folks out there um, in the AI hype cycle, it's a lot of big talk and you know, there's kind of almost a magical understanding of and a magical ambition for AGI. And the reality is the path to get there is, built one square at a time with integrity and, careful thought. It's a complex problem. I think baby steps, my interpretation of that is modularity. There's a lot of different pieces that need to be, you need to put love in a lot of different places to support the complexity of cognition that supported by machines. And that goes all the way from the all the way down to how the metal is engineered, to the low level systems that um, run on the metal, and then the intermediate layers up to the programming languages that are developer facing, and then the ways that those are expressed, the ways that knowledge and data are represented and queried, all have to be rethought for this. And so, we'll see LLMs, and it's incredible what we can get, and yet we're all kind of experiencing this threshold of the limit of that, and it's starting to become more palpable, I think, to people on an everyday basis who interact with them, what they're good at and what they're not good at. And so, when we think baby steps, I think, yeah, it's how do we decompose the problem? How do we concurrently sort of delegate out the experiments and the deep work that needs to be done to lots of different teams, and carefully engineer each one of those as if it was, the center, in and of itself, the center of the universe. And so, we have all these different pieces. Dr. Ben Goertzel and Matt Ikle, who I work closely with in on this, have been working on this for 40 years plus. So, you know, all that time has been, given a depth of perspective. Um, I think it's Singularity Net. We use sort of almost an evolutionary approach, where a lot of projects are happening simultaneously. When I came in, it wasn't clear to me how they were all coordinated. But you know, as we're 2025 has been uh, a really telling year, and for me, having been around a couple of years, it's an exciting time where a lot of things are surfacing all at once. So I think where that modest approach is the one that was taken here, doing things in a deep way rather than sort of like a quick and dirty way. Um, how many different ways can we exploit an LLM? It's much harder. It's much more complicated, and from the outside, it almost looks like nothing's happening. But from where I'm sitting, it is really awesome to see these things starting to surface, the infrastructure taking shape, the cognitive algorithms rolling off the assembly line from the depths of research, um, into the first stages of development, deployment, the global AGI research community. So Yeah, maybe leave that question there.
Thank you so much, Ken. I think that's very, I love that you said that baby steps basically involves decomposing the problem. And I like that you shared how it's how things have been coming together at Singularity Net. And when you said you've been on this for over 40 years, I was just thinking, oh my goodness, that's before I was born. And really, this is very fascinating to know how with modularities, how everything has to, come apart to make sense, and how you've been at the center of that, and how, what baby steps actually looks like, how starting small really is the step to getting there, right? Baby steps are not they're not just about small ambitions, they're how big ambitions get realized. It's about connecting something from one to the next. It's a specific approach. And so that leads me then to my next question. You've led ventures across AI, fintech, and Web3 with what you call a product led, execution driven approach. How does that mindset change when you think about building towards AGI versus just, researching it?
Hmm. Yeah, talk about humility. I mean, if any, any startup founder basically punished on a daily basis into understanding the realities of the market. It's painful and it's quite thankless a lot of the times. Happens, most of it happens, when nobody's looking. These big victorious VC rounds and when things work. But there's a lot of struggles that go and accumulate before someone's ready to do that and has the the skills and the opportunity and the luck to to break through. So I think for me, um, there's some things I learned to respect. As a startup founder, it's you know, at one point I thought about it in a magical way, as you do naively with most things that you're just approaching from the outside. I thought surely if I do these things, someone will magically come in and give me money. A VC will come in, they'll appreciate where we're going with this, and it will be so compelling that it'll just keep coming. And um, surely if we build this thing, people will just immediately start using it. And it's just, you know, uh, the grounding those assumptions, invalidating those assumptions was really telling for me. So I have this uh, approach it sort of reflects the continuum of idea and research to boots on the ground, uh, getting your hands dirty, deploying stuff. I learned how to um, deploy stuff early, how to think about MVPs in a way that balanced really well with something that actually people, even in its like really simple, inchoate first state, is compelling enough that people will climb out of their comfort zones and use it because it's going to solve something for them, right? People um, don't like to change their workflows. Uh, and so if you're going to introduce something that's going to change their path, it's got to offer an outsized value, and that's also true with AGI and AGI libraries and components and infrastructure. Why am I going to adopt this if you don't even understand why the value proposition to a developer, a researcher? You can't if you can't communicate that simply, then you're not going to get users. You're not going to get adoption, and so our mission is to not just build AGI, one component and one layer of infrastructure at a time. It's also to build a community and to provide tools that enable safe and robust collaboration on a global scale on this problem. So, having worked in software, you learn to be considerate of the end user and remove the friction so that adoption can be a no-brainer. I think probably that has informed my viewpoint, and has brought a good balance to Singularity Net AGI development, where we have a lot of deep researchers that need to meander, um, explore, and really should not be too bothered with how we package that up and make it user friendly. And so, we need coordinated efforts to protect the deep theory work, and then we need people that are trained in doing hard end, robust, easily usable, well documented libraries, packages, infrastructure for the consumption of others. Yeah.
That's very, very profound. I like that you shared this viewpoint of yours. And I like that you also mentioned that we do need coordinated efforts to protect the the theory work. And I really was just thinking about how the distinction between research and shipping and working is so important. And it makes me think about the gap between what we talk about and what actually has to exist. Because people get excited about AGI capabilities and all of these fun things that seems like, yeah, it's revolutionary. It's going to transform literally what life is, right?
Mhm.
And so my question then would be, what's that gap between the age I we talk about in conference keynotes, right? In those TikTok shorts and those Instagram reels that sound so powerful, and the actual infrastructure that has to exist before any of that can work.
Um, I said it earlier. I think in keynotes, AI is magic. And there's a great quote about the marvels of invention, being indistinguishable from magic at some point, but it's built one square at a time. The LLMs today are stateless, they're opaque, they hallucinate. Infrastructure to get past LLMs is super non-trivial, to even imagine, much less build. So, it's just the grind of doing that deep math, assembling some of the world's best mathematicians and theorists to think it through. Um, you'll find a lot of people have different perspectives and will disagree, which is actually a great thing, because it's such a big problem. It's such a big holographic problem that you really need lots of different lenses. You need lots of people looking at this problem from different angles, and discussing. So a big part of what Matt E. Clay and myself do at SingularityNet is Haley Lowy as well, is foster um, communication among the different groups. And so it's it's the danger is when things get developed in silos, and then the systems that should interoperate don't have compatibility. So we we're we walk a delicate balance of allowing people to go deep, and then when it's the right time, we bridge the communication and make sure that the connective tissue is fluidly allowing interoperability. So I think this stuff goes slow until it doesn't, and then all of a sudden, things start happening faster and faster, to the point where you can't even keep up. And I think that we're gonna, we saw that with LLMs. I think as the new infrastructure comes online, we're gonna see a lot of acceleration. Uh, 2025 has been a very, very pleasant surprise for me. When I first came to Singularity Net, I wasn't even sure if some of these teams were going to be able to execute. I was new to it, looked very complicated, and there were a lot of things that just were not shipped. So 2025 has seen a lot of these things hitting, and as these things, like, 2026 is going to be awesome, and there'll be a lot of very interesting experimentation. So this is, I think we're getting to the really fun part.
Thank you so much, Kella. Yes, I think we are getting to the fun part. And I really love that you mentioned that it is important to bring on different lenses to to the work, right? And I was recently listened to, is it founder? I'm not, I can't quite remember now. And the person had mentioned that diversity in the workplace is not just about race and color, it's also about perspectives and lived experiences. And
Mm.
you are supposed to bring on people who have seen life in different ways. And so their lived experience informs the product building, informs how they're able to approach problems, right? So in that one workplace, and that behind that one product shouldn't just be one set of people. And what diversity really looks like is also including the fact that this person comes from a different social, not economic background, also a different country, even sometimes a different culture, the different school experience, and all of these things comes together into how there's you and how you see things, and then there's Matt Ickley, and then there's Ben, and there's all these people. And what really is so beautiful about all of these brilliant minds like yours coming together behind such a revolutionary concept like AGI is that everybody's going to see things differently, and that's something to celebrate, right? So yeah, thank you for
Yeah, like
sharing that.
you as well. I think it's yeah, it's incredible to have a global team, folks from every walk and country. And yeah, like you said, it's a really hard problem. It's a human. It's the most powerful technology in human in I don't in known history. And so it's with AI we know garbage in, garbage out. So
Yeah.
it's also love in, love out. You very much agree with your point there. Mhm.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. All right, moving on to the next question, right? But now we've seen how the unglamorous building blocks is exactly what we mean by baby steps. And your background gives you such an interesting lens on this. In fact, I really was surprised when I learned that you spent a whole decade building financial wellness, making financial wellness more accessible. And that seemed like such an interesting background because I know you because of Singularity Net. But I'd like to ask, what did that teach you about building AI that actually serves people, not just, impresses them?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So I was building financial tools. At first, I did a consumer product, and that forced me to have to learn to work with consumers, which is its own beast of a problem. And then beyond that, I actually went SaaS and stopped building my consumer product and shifted to a licensable software that could be installed by banks that would enable them to actually put out technology that was highly edifying for consumers. So, I always had this big problem that banks would make money when from people who didn't have money. When you run out of money, they charge you fees. When you don't have enough money in your account, they charge you fees. If you have lots of money, you get free banking and no fees. And that felt very perverse to me. So that was my driver in doing that. But in the dialogue, I wanted to say, okay, well, here's a smarter, more brainless, effortless way that people who don't even have a financial education can just automate, a baseline state of okayness, and maybe even express the things that are important, things that are due, owed, aspired to, and have those things just organically be watered when finances are good. Like you don't have to focus at this point on the how to get there. You just focus on earning. Um, and it was a great proposition, but it's kind of opposed to the mindset at a lot of banks. They're suspicious of it, kind of like this is some hippie cereal that's doesn't have like real sugar in it or something. But over that time, I learned how to speak, banker ease, and empathize with where they're coming from, it's a very fear-based perspective. Almost every single person in a bank is thinking about how to keep their job and not get their hand slapped. So everything is about covering your own reputation, and that made me realize that when I was asking them to use my software, I'm asking them to risk their paycheck that feeds their families on trying my thing. If I couldn't look at them in the eye and offer them total security, then I wasn't doing something ethical. Or and so a lot of it is um, communicating the actual picture. Here's the risk. Maybe you want to do a pilot with just your employees, and they can do it with small amounts of money. But you scale that up, right? If you want to work with bigger players, you've got to have infrastructure that is easy to adopt, that is an absolute no-brainer for risk. So when we're building AGI infrastructure and AGI algorithms, like it's really cool. We can do really cool experiments that wake up, these sort of emergent, intelligent behaviors. But when we deploy that, we have to think about that now, because the stuff goes slow and then it goes fast, right? I mean, you think about like the very first emergence of life, how this autocatalytic thing is just exploding once it starts happening and self-replicating. So my experience working with the biggest financial institutions in the world and in the States gave me that perspective of appreciating security and robustness all the way down to all the way down, all the way down, all the way up. That's when we look at ASI chain, Greg Meredith and the Firefly team, those uh, they're a team that has worked with the biggest of the big companies and done massive contracts, and so are used to delivering on that scale for enterprise. So enterprise, like when anytime you get into enterprise anything, it's just a whole different game. You have to everything that gets shipped has to be done so with excellence, and a huge amount of care. uh, so yeah, probably working, running that show, having to go through my own compliance uh, processes was just really painful, and gave me a good sense for how to get adoption in the biggest economies, the biggest with working with some of the biggest players out there. If you want to do a deal that can change everything for the adoption of what we're putting out there, it's got to be robust, and you have to think about these things from the beginning.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I am in awe of you and the work that you've been doing. And yeah, I like that, you've got to think about the robustness from the beginning. And I like that approach to think about these things, to be more intentional about the people that you want to serve,
Hmm.
right? To look them in the eye and know that, you know what, I'm doing right by you, and I'm doing right by myself as a founder or a builder. I think that's something that's really important, and we really shouldn't sweep under the carpet or be one of those byline texts we forget actually should dictate how we lead and how we build, right? People are always going to be, humanity is always going to be more important, and doing right by them in any capacity that we are privileged to serve is important as well. Thank you
Hmm.
so much, Kara, for sharing that. And it makes me want to ask you something that I'm
Hmm.
genuinely curious about. Because, again, like I was sharing in the beginning of this episode, I had scribbled baby steps to AGI somewhere, and I was listening to a podcast, And I just screamed to myself, okay, what do people actually want from AGI? And I just thought, no, there's nobody that is going to answer this better than you. And so, Kella, my question to you is, what do you think people actually want from AGI? Not like what we think we want, want to hear from your perspective, or what sounds exciting in keynotes, but like what are the real problems that they need solved
Mm.
in your experience?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm the person to ask this question to, but if you're just doing a random guy on the street question, to me, I would say, we live in a complex time. There's more and more and more bills in your email, more channels on social. People are, balancing, I think, more heavy loads cognitively than they ever have, and they want to have a good family life, and they want to have good relationships, and they want to live in the world and not just be glued to their machines. So I think there's a real opportunity for AGI to help us make sense of the digital chaos that we live in, and balance that with the world that is already complex enough. And so if you have this machine capable of computing huge broad problems, I think having a good thinking partner is probably a good one. But if you're asking me what I think, people are going to ask the genie when it comes out of the bottle, it's probably going to go in every direction that you can imagine, and maybe converge somewhere around living happier, healthier, more balanced lives, where people have good quality of life.
I think that simple yet profound, right? We really do want a better quality of life. There's an overload of information. There's just too much from when we wake up to the news channels to all these social. Why I always ask myself, are there so many social media platforms? And we are this generation right now, okay, in this time and age, humanity is just more stressed than ever, right? The bills,
Mm.
like you said, there are a lot. There's just so much happening, and yeah, I think that at the core of it, we'll just find that we really just want a better quality of life. And AGI is promising that. And I think,
Mm.
as you said, I'm excited for 2026 and all that will happen in that regard, and see how much betterment we begin to introduce to humanity and daily living. So, yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think they'll. I mean, I want somebody to pay my bills for me. Yeah, I want somebody to do all the unglamorous stuff, do my chores, right? Like,
Oh,
there's just too much. There's just too much. I think everybody wants a robot that's going to clean the dishes and do the laundry.
yeah.
I mean, I think there's stuff that we do that people might rather not do. There's certain jobs that are just repetitive and menial, and we might want to not necessarily an AGI to have to. I don't know if you need something that does the dishes and pays the bills to be conscious. You probably could have a conscious machine write programs and design robots that do those things, so that all the conscious things can do cool stuff. Us and AGIs, we can be off ruminating, um, on bigger problems.
Understanding actual needs versus assumed needs also is a very critical distinction. And it's some and this I think this all leads us back again to the infrastructure. You're working on decentralized infrastructure and AI data centers at Singularity Net. Now, what are the parts of the stack that nobody sees but everything depends on?
Oh gosh, yeah. This is building AGI is if you had centralized systems to do this on, that would already be a massive problem to solve. And doing it in a distributed way over distributed machines and data that's spread out over the internet, just adds so much more complexity, and it just compounds the complexity of it. ASI chain itself, the work that Greg Meredith and the Firefly team are doing is, it has its own long history of years and years and years of that evolving. So, you know, imagine a blockchain that enables you to do all of the, sophisticated transactions of an AI marketplace, but it also has to support cognition, right? Like, okay, this is an infrastructure that has to support thought, and thought is not a linear process. It's holographic. You have data that's shared between different uh, subsystems that are both simultaneously affecting the the process of evolving um, inference and evolving knowledge. I just think it is amazing. It's like a blockchain of thought. It's a blockchain of cognition. That alone is amazing. The distributed atom space is just came online. This has an attention mechanism that allows meta expressions, or let's just say AGI expressions, to be able to get answers in the way that humans get answers from our brains, right? We have all these neurons, and if every time we had to think of, do I want a croissant or do I want a bagel for breakfast, if I had to go and hit every neuron in my brain and crunch this, all the possible of all the things in the universe I could eat for breakfast, I'm probably not going to do that. I have a network of like a short list of when I think of breakfast, it's the tree of breakfast items is pretty short for me and efficient. And so, we have now knowledge structures that mimic that efficiency per context, right? I say the word breakfast, I get my tree of options. I say go for a walk, I have an even shorter list of options. I say, whatever, what am I going to do this morning? It broadens up, but based on what's warm in my memory, I have a map of stuff that jumps to mind. So we have, the blockchain of thought. We have this atom space, distributed atom space technology that is, custom designed for the exact problems that we need to crunch in the exact way we need to crunch them, which is, for cognition over distributed resources. Pretty cool. And that's just a couple, right? We have also the fastest graph traversal on Earth with a system called Mork, and I think that's fastest probably by a factor of three. Um, you know, that's that mimics the sort of ultra fast way that we can, think of things with our minds. We're not, waiting for a rainbow wheel to spin and then, after a couple of minutes, well, sometimes we are, probably for me more than others. But it's, we're each of these systems is like a different scalpel. It's a different specialized tool, an intelligent system can use at the right time. If you have more time to ruminate, crunch deeper problems, we have systems that enable that, like the way that we, think of a problem at night and then go to sleep. And then at night, you kind of crunch through these things and with those subconscious systems, um, all the way to if there's an explosion and you've got to, choose which direction to dive, you've got to be able to respond quickly. So, all these different subsystems provide their own unique utility, which all come together in this harmonized intelligent system.
Wow, I didn't know so much was going on and so many brilliant things actually going on. Really, there really is an invisible foundation that makes everything else possible. And that's the infrastructure that right behind, especially at Singularity Net in a nutshell, really. I really am impressed and amazed at the achievements and the progress that's happening in such a little time. So thank you, Kella, for sharing that. Quite inspiring, to know that these
Mm.
technologies are moving forward and moving at such incredible speed, backed by really brilliant minds. Thank you. Let me ask my next question. When you're making infrastructure decisions today, how do you then distinguish between what's just incremental versus what actually compounds over time?
Mm. Well, luckily, most of these big uh, questions have been crunched for me. Ben's a brilliant visionary for AGI, and like I said, he's been crunching this problem for many decades. It really is just humbling and thrilling to do this work with him and the other great minds at Singularity Net. Incremental versus compounding. That's feels like linear versus exponential. And I would say there's a foundational approach to that. Functional programming versus the old school logical programming. It in its nature, it supports these sort of more holographic processes, right? Computational processes. And I think the nature of the infrastructure we're building is exponential. Now we're just building it. We the Meta, the programming language of thought,
Yeah,
it's a functional programming language. So, there are no variables. It supports this sort of it's much more similar to some of the thought, some of the processes I think the cognition that happens in a mind. It supports uh, uh, deep understanding, true understanding. That's the difference, and that's why it's taken 4 years since we decided to start the infrastructure work, which was hugely ambitious to get here. I mean, and I think even the normal scale for these things to be usable would be much longer, and we've kind of smashed those timelines because we've been working urgently with great people who are knowledgeable. And yeah, so I think by design our infrastructure is there to support exponential computing.
that's
Mhm.
that's brilliant. That's really amazing. I'd say a huge well done to you and the team working towards this. So now for my next question, because we're almost out of time, and yeah, we're almost actually done with the questions.
Mhm.
Yay. Okay, so I wanted us to explore a bit through your systems thinking lens, and I think it's so valuable for understanding compounding effects. And it makes me think about decentralization itself. So, my question for you is this: do you think decentralization in AI needs to be progressive, baby steps, like we've themed this, rather than trying to flip everything at once? Um, what breaks if you try to decentralize everything immediately, or at least what can potentially break apart?
This was written by some. This was written um, in a way that implies that you already know the answer very well. A lot of decentralization, I think, is just a principle. I mean, it's just like anything else. It should be used judiciously. It's not doesn't make sense to just make everything decentralized and apply that principle in every direction to every problem. And it's what you want is to go in hierarchically down the list of like what is really important to have be decentralized and open. And I like the what I like about Singularity Net is our commitment to making our research open. It's open source. It's um, community community driven. And when it comes to the hard infrastructure, it's we are definitely going to have some centralized systems. Centralized, we'll have things hosted. We might have things hosted on our servers in our new Swedish data center at Singularity Compute. There might be an application running there that deploys agents into a distributed space where the agents go off and are registered to a distributed ledger, so that they can be used on a chain. And as we go, you'll see more and more services that are hosted, on distributed nodes, living on chain. And so it's a gradient. I don't think it's wise to try to just blanket apply decentralization to every aspect. You do it in a way that supports the bigger vision, and what supports the way that we want this thing to function, and how we want it to be safe and ethical and open, so that when AGI comes online, it's something that's not controlled in this way, where any one entity can tamper with it and bias it. Those are the things that are really important, right?
Yeah, those are the things that are really important. I had to write down something you said. Decentralization is a principle, and like anything else, it should be used judiciously. And I think that is so key because we can really get caught up in trying to create that decentralized environment. There's such a shift for many people that we forget that it's not everything in a decentralized
Mm.
environment or a decentralized ecosystem that should be decentralized. And I think that's really interesting. Progressive decentralization as a strategy right now is such a practical reframe for me, and I'm sure it will be for anyone listening right now or for anyone who would listen to the replay. Thank you so much, Kella. But all of this makes me curious about the execution as well. And um, almost to wrap things up, I think perhaps this might be the last question. Can you then share something you've built that looked simple on paper but turned out to be way more complex in practice? And what did that teach you? Anything
I'll
at
keep
all?
I'll keep this short. I've been rambling, but yeah, I'll say, anything that touches humans, right? When it's nice to deploy, I kind of like componentry, because you can kind of ship a library, um, and ensure that it's loads on different machines, or a package, and just you know you make sure the lower level it is, the less complexity, of you know when you have to do a registration, forgot password, and verifications, and badges, all that stuff gets complex, and then tracking. you know i I think, user facing systems that I've built, I've been surprised by how much tooling and metering that has to be in place to sort of support, you know, people coming from all over the internet to accept um, your product, and use it, and plug it into their lives. So, um, for us at Singularity Net, we're building brand new paradigms of of technology. And so, you know, the complexity there is how do you onboard people to even just kind of conceptually, grok the big idea, like what even is this? How can I even use this? And in a gradual way, lower and lower and lower the on ramp, so that more and more people can adopt them. I mean, ultimately, what would be great is for us to obscure all the complexity and allow people to come in and express themselves at the speed of thought on tools that, essentially allow you to vibe code, AGI, creations with with uh, with AGI, and be able to, express, transact, have, gain assistance from, and monetize your creations, without having to understand all the complexity underneath. You can just interact with it as you would any other intelligent, highly intelligent system.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think there's so much to learn from that. And thank you so much for sharing, your experience as a builder in that regard with us. I think really you've dropped so many great gems tonight. But I have one last question, and it's not something that you might be prepped for, and it's not something particularly related to the topic, but just to, learn from Kella, the human, not just Kella, the uh, innovation officer. My question is this: what's the best advice you've ever received? And
Oh
that is
boy.
my last question, I promise.
Oh gosh. I don't know how good I am at this answering this. Oh, I mean, this is not I guess related to work, but one of my friends who is a well-known thinker and songwriter, John Perry Barlow. Uh, we were sitting in a park in New York, um, over 20 years ago, and he was telling me about this experience that he had with this older lady that traveled the world, and was just like he was just enamored with her. And he asked her what was her secret, and she just said, "Look, over life you're going to have all these forks in the road to choose from, and at the end of the day, at the end of your life, um, the uh, the ones that matter will be the ones you can remember. So my algorithm is to always choose to do things that are going to make strong memories. So that was something that stuck with me.
That's really beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that. You've given us really such practical wisdom today, from this great advice you've shared. And the reminder that people want AI that solves real problems that, generally just improves our quality of life. And you've shared really profoundly about the infrastructure that is going on and the realities that exist behind closed doors, so to speak. And perhaps most importantly, we've seen the world through your systems thinking lens for a moment. And I think for me, I'd say that it definitely, this conversation has helped me to understand how small components interact and compound into something greater. So thank you, Kela, for sharing. You are amazing. The work you do is amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really are grateful for your time with us tonight. Thank you.
Oh, just I want to say, really, we all really appreciate you all over there too, keeping the storytelling alive here, and helping to spread the word, because it's just there's this team here is trying to build technology that isn't just powerful for the sake of power, for being powerful. It's our hope is that we build an AGI that it makes the world more humane, and
Yeah.
so part of spreading that story is really important. So just appreciate you and your thoughtful questions, and the team for keeping this thread, putting it out there.
Oh, thank you so much, Kara. I would send regards to the rest of the team, especially those who are unable to be here today. Part of the team you'd see Andrea, Priscilla, Event Circle and Marketing Circle have been doing great work as regarding the X spaces. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thanks
for the
for having me.
platform.
Hmm.
Thank you for all of the work. At least you're doing great work that we get to talk about. So handing off, perhaps. So yeah, thank you to you. And for our listeners, we are wrapping up tonight for the AI Deconstructed series. So if you've missed any episode, it's been 10 episodes so far. Just go back and listen. It all tracks, right? It's like a step by step. So it all compounds really. So you could start from the beginning and end up right here with this conversation with Kella. But then I'd say this just to leave with you. That's whether you're building infrastructure, if you're conducting research maybe, or if you're just trying to figure out how to contribute to this massive undertaking. I hope that this conversation challenges how you think about progress. Because in a space that is obsessed with disruption, in a world that is obsessed with um, being the first of many things and exponential curves, even, sometimes you find that the most life-changing revolutionary act is, taking the right next step in clarity and in purpose. That moonshot AGI thing we talk about, the it won't just happen in one giant leap. It is through infrastructure that nobody sees, decisions that compound, and baby steps, like we've captioned today. So thank you to everyone listening. We are not just building AGI in a day, we are building it one deliberate, strategic, thoughtful step at a time. And that's not a limitation, right? It is how complex systems actually emerge. Thank you for joining us for AI Deconstructed. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Thank you for riding with us, for following us on social media. Also, side eye to who is not following us yet. Please hit the follow and turn on your notifications so you get notified firsthand when we have conversations like this. Thank you for being a part of this, for supporting us in every way that you've been supporting us. Um, we really are grateful. We the events, the themes, everything can be nice, but if you don't show up, it really doesn't mean anything. There are very interesting things going on at Deep Funding, very interesting things going on at Singularity Net, as you've heard. And if you can participate, right? Participate. I always say that we are people that do not wait for the future to happen. We're people that create the future we want to happen. And it's been a pleasure to have these interesting conversations. Christmas is next week. And yeah, so we're not going to be here next week or in 2 weeks for the New Year's. We are going to be back in January as soon as we can. Very interesting speakers already prepping, sharpening their swords, polishing their armor to bring you brilliant conversations yet again. So yeah, we'll see you in January. And thank you so much for being part of AI Deconstructed and for being part of the funding. From me, your host, Miriam, and everyone at the Event Circle and Marketing Circle who has been doing such a great job with our flyers and our, captions. A huge shout out to Lucas, Rakosi, Rebel. You guys are amazing. Huge shout out to Priscilla for all the timely posts. A huge shout out to Andrea for being our backbone. A huge shout out to Ayo and Cardoso and Mayo, members of the event circle, and to Yan and Raphael, always cheering us up on Mattermost, and to every speaker we've had from Rojo to Haley to Esther, um, to Dr. Ayo, to John just last week, Kella today. Wow, really great speakers we've had on, guys. Thank you so much, and see you in January. Goodbye.